morning, everyone. Here we are on Tuesday, and I want to highlight a man in the Bible today who used not only what he had on his person, but again, used his profession and his skills to serve God. This man is David. Now, David was a young man, about 17 years old at the time of the story of David and Goliath. Now, Goliath was a tall man, almost 7 feet tall, and considered a giant, especially to David, who wasn't considered very statuesque, if you will. But the armies of Israel were in fear of these Philistines because Goliath was their champion. And it says for 40 days they basically stayed behind the lines. And David was sent by his father to the brothers who were in the army to bring them food. And David hears the words of this Philistine mocking God, and he is outraged. And he's like, "What is going on here?" And they say, "Well, no one can challenge him. He's too much for us." So David goes to the king and says in 1 Samuel, chapter 17, verse 31, when the words which David spoke were heard, because he said he would go fight him, David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail on account of him. Your servant," talking about himself, "will go and fight this Philistine." Saul told him, "You can't fight him. You're a small man, and Goliath has been a warrior since before you were born." David said to him, "I've tended my father's sheep when a lion or bear came and would try and snatch a lamb from the flock. So I chased after him and attacked it and rescued it. And when the lion rose up against me, I grabbed his beard, struck him, and killed him. I've killed a lion, I have killed a bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be just like one of them because he is taunting the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And then in verse 40 it says this, and this is important. He took a stick in his hand. Again, like yesterday, what's in your hand? What are you willing to take up in the name of God? He took a stick in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his pouch. And then we go down, and it says David, in verse 49, David put his hand in his bag, took 1 stone, slung it, struck the Philistine in the head. The stone sank to the ground, and he fell face down. David had no doubt in his mind who God was and who his God was, and he knew the God with him would help him prevail. He had no doubt. And people say, well, if he had no doubt, why is it he took 5 stones and not just 1? This is important. According to Scripture, Goliath was part of a hereditary line of gargantuans. They were considered giants. Goliath at this point had recorded 1 living brother whose name was Lami. And you can see that in Chronicles chapter 20. Goliath had a brother named Lami, who was later killed by the Israelites. And Goliath also had 3 sons. Their names were Ishbi-Benob, Sippai, and Goliath Jr., also known as Exegdacalus. Ugh, these names. See, God doesn't just take care of the now. God takes care of always. And this is a perfect example of how he used his servant David to not only destroy what the Israelites were coming against, but he cut off the entire line of this mocker. Mocking God has a price. Now, this is the Old Testament. There was no grace. There was judgment and death. This giant mocker of God paid the ultimate price for his sins. And God cut off his entire family line through King David. Not the king at the time, but through the actions of what everyone considered an insignificant child. If you consider yourself insignificant, let me tell you this. God will use whatever you have at hand to his purposes if you will say, I got this. I'm with you, God. What do you need your servant to do?